Anypoint data graph. So I will take any questions at the end of this presentation because we want to cover because of this is very new topic. Only some people might be heard. I think it is going to be very useful in your organizations for implementations, and I hope this might change even the way of implementing the MuleSoft APIs also. You can explore later once it is done the session and learn more, and you can share your knowledge also. Yes, so the Anypoint data graph is one, recently released version in May 2021. The MuleSoft has been released this product as part of a Anypoint platform, which is going to provide you the capability of reusing your APIs, whatever you implement in your organizations. And it is going to be the unified data in one place from all the APIs it is going to bring. So you developed 10 APIs already in your organizations. You don't need to create one more experience API to, get the data from different APIs. Using this data graph, you can dynamically query the data from these 10 APIs also. That is a really good feature it is providing using this data graph. As a developer, what you are going to get a benefit is you can dynamically query the data. You can, access all your schemas from the different APIs, and you can consume the data from the different APIs also. With this, what you are going to get your organization? Our organizations are going to get a productivity, and it is going to reduce the operational cost. You don't have to develop anything new if you want to access a new element from any existing API. Or you don't need to develop any new code for a new consumer. Using this data graph, you can reuse the existing APIs as it is, and you can increase your productivity as well as it will reduce the operational cost. Now, to implement this data graph, what are the prerequisites? Either if you want to learn or if you want to use in your organizations, what basic things you should have? We should have Anypoint platform anyways, and you should be aware of Exchange, and you should be aware of RAML or OAS specifications, that is API specifications. We would be familiar with that, and we should have a proper permissions for those API Exchange as well as API RAMLs also. Yes, the Anypoint platform is the basic thing for all your RAMLs creation as well as publishing anything in Exchange and all. As well as we should have a access for contributing something in a Exchange. That permission should be there. If you have created any RAMLs or anything, you should have a permission of contribution permission to publish your RAMLs and all. To access the data internally, it is going to call different APIs and all, right? So proper allocation of vCores. It should be allocated for your business group as well as for your organizations if you want to use this data graph. That is a prerequisite. So that means that basically you should be familiar with MuleSoft implementation still now, whatever you are doing. That means the proper implementation, RAMLs, everything. Then on top of it only, we can implement the data graphs. Yes, so I think Ruksar or Ravi, so maybe if anybody post any questions or anything, if you want to ask in the middle, yes, we can take it in middle also. I don't want to read something and give anything. Yes, you can stop anytime. And we should be interactive also. So I'm going to take this architecture. I have an existing organization which has some of the system APIs, and they have implemented some of the process APIs. And currently they have only one web application currently. They created only one web API currently. But the organization, they want to go move on mobilization and digitalization. What they want to do is they want to create a mobile app to tracking the orders or anything. Even they want to create something for the digital purpose also, for exposing for the third parties or for anything. To do this, what will happen? Again, whoever is the organization, they need to spend some money for exposing the data to mobile app, and for the digital application, they need to create a separate experience API. And there might be the process APIs we need to create based on the requirement from the mobile app and digital applications also. To do this, maybe it will take some 6 months or more, but my organization don't want to spend that much time, as well as they don't have that much budget also to implement that. But they want it in some other way. Can it be done it or anything? Yes, the MuleSoft has been provided a new feature now without writing any new experience API or process APIs. Whatever the existing APIs you have in your organizations, they can directly query the data using this data graph, and they can access by the mobile applications or digital applications. Now, an example, that is one benefit. The second thing is, imagine this is the web page I have. So I just took it for the example. So if you see that over here, I have some customer details, some order details, some fulfillment details like tracking details and all. So this page, if I want to fill it with all the data, the order details and all, what this UI needs to be done, they need to call different APIs. They need to call the customer API to get the customer details. They need to call the order API to call and get the order details to display, and some tracking details and all. They need to call some fulfillment API or anything. So there are multiple calls it is made by this UI to just load this page. It may take longer time because of multiple API calls needs to be done, as well as the data needs to be bring from the different APIs. Instead of doing that with a single request from the UI, they can call a single request, and they can request, they want it customer details, only those details they can query using this data graph. That means using this data graph, it is going to reduce the number of API calls. So with a single API call from the consumer can access our data unifiedly. That is going to be the more benefit, right? So the response time might be the different, because of even the customer API might have 100 fields, but this UI doesn't have and don't need that many fields to be displayed. They can query only the required fields also. That will give even less response time also. That is the one of the benefit it is going to get more now using this data graph. So now that are the two benefits over here we are going to get now. Now, what you can do with this data graph? You can dynamically query the data. That is what we can dynamically query the data from the unified schema. That means all the 10 APIs, if they have, they can query this data from this dynamically. That means I need only the customer ID. I can query only the customer ID. If I need only the order details, maybe order name, number, and the product name, only that I can retrieve it. I can query. I don't need to write a separate code for that. I developed only once, but I can reuse. And with a single UI, the data graph UI, with that, we can use this application data, network data, whatever it is required. And we can reuse or serve the information without writing any code. Yes, I already mentioned, you don't have to write any new code for accessing any data now. Using this data graph, automatically it is going to get it. So some of the futures, what it is going to have, that Anypoint data graph is, it is going to have a unified schema. That means I have a customer API. It has a customer data type and address data type. I have a order API which has a order details data type, and similarly different APIs have different data types. Now all these data types are going to create as a unified schema, as a single schema. Okay, so that you can centralize all the data in one place using this data graph. So you can run this data graph using the queries and all, you don't need to maintain any code or anything separately. It is going to reduce overhead and maintenance cost also. And we can consume multiple APIs with a single query, and we can get the data faster. You don't have to query 10 APIs or anything. Only with a single query, it can call multiple APIs also. And yes, I already mentioned, we can add the APIs to the unified schema. If you create a new API system, API or anything, in the future, you can add it to your existing unified schema also. Sometime what will happen, I have address data type in a customer API. I have another address data type, which is in a tracking details API. In that case, I have a same data type, right? Why should I have the same type? If it is exactly the same data, you can merge those data types and use as a single data type. If it is a similar fields are there, you can link them also. Like, one of the data type has only 5 elements, another data type has 2 elements, but it is a name is same and it is kind of a similar fields, then you can link those data types also using this data graph. Yes, I mentioned this consume multiple APIs with a single request. I'm going to show how we can do that also. Then we can troubleshoot and monitor API performance also. Maybe if I'm calling 3 APIs, how much time my API is taking. Okay, so the what is the response time each API is taking. Those things we can troubleshoot using this data graph also. So, but how exactly it is going to work? So I think, I'm speaking a lot, maybe if anybody has any question in the middle, I can take it for a minute.
Sure, Amir. Like it can be interactive also.
Yes, yes. Any questions? Maybe let me check in a chat.
Yeah, you can check in chat. Yeah.
Does data first? Okay. Is add-on feature. So I think with the current
Amir, you are on mute.
okay, sorry. I was talking. Yeah. So if I think the question is it an add-on feature, additional charges as per the license? So it is currently with the Anypoint platform, it is giving by MuleSoft. The cost, I think the additional charges and all we can check with the MuleSoft, but with the latest release of Anypoint platform, if you log in or sign up for the Anypoint platform, you can see the option of data graph newly. Okay, either you can explore more and you can communicate with MuleSoft for the licensing and charges. Does data graphs come with Anypoint subscription? Yes, Anypoint platform subscription, it will come. Yes, is it similar to Graph API? Yes, it is similar to Graph API. It internally, that Anypoint data graph internally uses the GraphQL. Okay, the GraphQL is another product which is integrated in a MuleSoft data graph. Yes, so another question is, if you want to get a data from multiple system API, do we need to put a joint query and some unique identifier between this API? Yes, that's correct. So we are going to learn this. I will be showing that how we can write these queries, how we can link those unique identifier. That is also we are going to talk about it during the demo. How do you define the common authentication when my different APIs has a different authentication mechanism? That is a good question. So I will be showing in the demo. So Each API will have a different authentication mechanism might be. In a data graph, when you are going to add these APIs, so if you want to use this as a unified schema, first of all, we need to add this API into the Anypoint data graph. During that time, so whatever the secure mechanism you have, that we are going to configure. I will be showing that also. So if you have allocate different vCore for the system API, how we can allocate the vCore for this data graph? So we are not going to allocate any vCore for Anypoint data graph. Based on the system APIs, how the vCores allocated, those it is going to take because of you. It's not data graph. You are not going to deploy it in a runtime anywhere. So whatever the runtime it has APIs, those data we are going to access it. That means we are going to query those data. That's it. So yeah, so the question answered already. The runtime manager, are we going to deploy it in runtime manager with a unified schema? No, we are not going to. We will get this Anypoint Studio, I guess. So it's not with Anypoint Studio. It is a part of Anypoint platform. Yes, with a trial account, but if you logged in recently, like after maybe May 15 or something, maybe, if you sign up for the new account, then only you will get with a trial account this Anypoint data graph. Okay, so I think got much questions are asked. I think it is valid questions. Let me proceed. I think you will get some more idea. So I was talking about, we can query all the APIs data with a single request, and I'm saying that we can reuse and all I'm telling. But exactly how this data graph internally works, that is what we need to know. So what will happen, I created an API, the customer API in my Anypoint platform in a design center. What will happen is immediately, if I create a data type of customer data type, immediately the Anypoint platform is going to store that data as a graph metadata. So the internally it stores as a metadata. Okay. So now whenever if you add that API into Anypoint data graph, this metadata is going to be available within the unified schema. Now, there is one bigger schema. That bigger schema, whenever you add a new API to Anypoint data graph, all your metadata is going to store in a unified schema. And using this Anypoint data graph, what will happen? You can query that data, right? Those fields, whatever the linked fields and all. So that time it is going to access it from that unified schema itself, not from your actual API. So now you don't need to even understand what are those backend APIs and all there. If you are able to access the unified schema, you don't need to understand the backend APIs also. It automatically, your unified schema understand what are the capabilities it has your backend API also. One more thing is maybe I'm exposing the more data my customer API, but which I don't want to show some of the details like, a permanent account number, which is part of a customer API, but I don't want to display that or I don't want to expose that data. In a data graph, still you can, hide that field also. That feature also we have in the Anypoint data graph. So this is how it is going to work. Imagine I'm creating a customer API which has customer and address data type which I created. As soon as I created these data types, the metadata is going to store that a graph metadata is going to store it into the Anypoint platform. Now I created a order API. Order data type and status data type, these two are going to create as a metadata in Anypoint platform. Similarly, I developed a new API called product API. The product API database, the data types are going to store as a metadata. Now your Anypoint platform has different data types metadata as a graph metadata available. Now I want to access the data from all these APIs. So if you want to access all these APIs data, either you can directly call these APIs separately, but now using this data graph, you can query with a single request. But to access that single request, but all this data should be available in one place, right? So that place should be now called unified schema. Initially, the unified schema will be empty. There is nothing is available. Now I want to export the customer API data through the Anypoint data graph. To do that, I add customer API to the Anypoint data graph. Once I add into data graph, what will happen? That metadata is going to be available in a unified schema. Now I add a second API, order API. That order API related data types or metadata is going to store it into the unified schema now. Now ask me one question. If you see this, my customer data type has address as a data type. Even order API has billing address, which is referring address data type. Is it going to be the conflict or not? It's going to be the conflict. What you can do? So if it is exactly the same fields of having in a two different APIs, you can merge as a single data type and it will store as a single object in a unified schema. But if we have a different elements in a different objects, order API has a more detail, a more customer name as well as some details more in our address. But in a customer address, it might be having less fields. What you can do, these two objects link as a single object. Either you can rename it or you can keep it as it is address, but we can store as a single object also by linking them. Okay, so even I will be showing that how we can link those objects also in Anypoint data graph. Now I add product API to the Anypoint data graph. That metadata is going to store it in a unified schema. Now my organization has whatever the three APIs already there. Those all APIs data types metadata is stored into unified schema. Now you can query these objects data directly using this Anypoint data graph. Okay, so this is what I showed already. The enable the collaboration between the objects types. We can access the data from these different APIs. We can link those objects. Okay, if it is a similar data types, similar elements, I can say. We can merge those data types if it is the same, exactly the same fields if it is having. Okay, that is unified schema. That means the unified schema is, set of data elements or data types, which is part of your unified schema. Now, when you are going to query those APIs, internally this GraphQL. So the GraphQL is one of the query language for all APIs, which is going to use internally by the Anypoint data graph. Now, using this GraphQL, we can retrieve the data. One thing is, now Anypoint data graph currently can access only the get methods because of we are going to query the data. We are not posting any data, right? That's why we can't post anything. So still we should use API lead connectivity in case of if we have something requirement of posting something and all, but querying, you can get the data only using this data graph. Any questions before I go to the demo?
So there is one question, Amir, from Manisha.
Okay.
How can we pass different authentication by
Yes, I
pointing one?
yes, I answered already that. So how we can pass the different authentication mechanism, right? So customer API is maybe exposed as a, we can access using the client ID, secret ID. So when you are going to add this API into Anypoint data graph, that time you need to configure that. I'm going to show in the as part of a demo also how we can add it. But another API, maybe if it is customer API itself, can be accessible using different secure mechanisms. You can use any one of the mechanism, right, to access the data, so that you can configure while we are going to add it. Yes, one more question is okay. Let me take a question some more here. Can we call unified schema as a common data model? That's correct. It is a single data model for all your existing APIs. How we can pass a different authentication? Already I answered that. I'm going to show you even in my demo also. So mutation is not available on subscription. So not sure. Can data graph call API which are not defined, deployed in runtime manager like external APIs? But it should have, first of all, it should have the API available in Exchange, first of all. And but if we from the Exchange, if you have something mocking data or anything, you can call them. But directly you can't configure those APIs. But if you have exposed a in Exchange, and in the RAML, you might be mentioned the URL, the external URL, then you can call the external APIs also. But the RAML should be RAML or OAS. We need to be published in our Exchange first of all. So if you want to update the data, can't we use data graph? Yes, we can't use. Can we do write operation using this only read operation? We can only do the read operation. Whether this data graph is as per environment. Yes, that's correct. It is as per the environment. So if you have a dev environment has a different data graph, and the production will have a different environment. Will it be any permission access with visible access for the object metadata? Yes, I mentioned already. So if you don't want to expose some of the data, you can hide those data and you can keep it those permission accessing permissions also. Does the data graph to get the details from the process API? Where do business logic? So yes, so if still the business logic and all, if you have more, you have to follow still the API led connectivity, and you can still implement the process API. You can directly call the process API, or if you want to call the system APIs, you can call, but the business logic mostly will be in a process API itself. How does marking happen for this sensitive data? Yes, yes, if the sensitive data, if you don't want to expose, you can put it that in a invisible. But if you want to mask them, you have to implement that in a process API, and you need to mask that. Can we unify mule and non-mule APIs? Yes, we can do. But for the non-mule APIs, you still have to, kind of a RAML, you need to create it, and you need to publish it in Exchange. The reason is, if you want to query the data from the unified schema, those data types should be added into unified schema, right? That is the reason we have to add in Exchange, and we can add that into Anypoint data graph. Yes.
Here.
Yes, there is.
So my question is what is the real-time effect? Suppose I change my system API, so is it going to affect in those changes, or should we redeploy the GraphQL?
GraphQL, you need to update if there is any changes in the RAML.
Not RAML. Suppose there is
logic.
Yes, in the logic.
You don't have to change anything in any data graph, but only if it is RAML change, like data type name changed, maybe, or maybe field name change. Those you need to update in a Anypoint data graph.
So you mean to say it will reflect in the real time?
Yes. Yes. Because if you are going to call the APIs, that's it. From the unified, you are going to query those data. That's it.
Okay, got it. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. So I think good. I will start with the demo. It will be interesting, hope. Yes, so as I already mentioned in this, I'm going to take a similar APIs over here, what I have. I have already something called customer API, order API, and process API. Let me open my Anypoint platform. If you see that, I have already designed them as a RAMLs. and published into Exchange. That is the first step we need to do. So this is everybody aware, the publishing the ramels and all in Exchange. So let me, I think I need to re-log in. I hope most of them already worked on these APIs. So see that I have a 4 APIs ramels over here. What I have done is I already published these APIs into Exchange. That is the first step we need to do. So we all know that how to create a API ramels and publishing into the Exchange. So this is already available. Now these APIs will have mocking services. Okay. So if you want to access some mocking data, we can give that URL in a Anypoint data graph. I will show that how to give that URL and all. But it is published this APIs into Exchange now. And this API is already running in my runtime. Now, this API is already running in my runtime. Let me show this APIs also in the runtime. You can see this API is already running in my runtime. So I can query the data using those APIs now. If I get the customers, when I use this URL, this is my runtime URL for the customers API. And you can see I have 2 customers over here with this some data over here. Okay. So now, similarly, you can get with ID also. Based on the ID also. If I want to get the tracking details, I can query those data also using these APIs directly. So this is all my existing APIs available in my organization. Now, how I can implement this in a Anypoint data graph? That is what we are going to show demo now. If I go to now, Anypoint platform over here, the previously we used to see only the design center, management center, and the Exchange, right? Now, with a if you log in directly now recently, like not login, I can say it is you need to sign up with your new user ID now. If you sign up with a new ID, then you will see the data graph. If you ask me, I have created maybe 3-4 months back my user ID. If I access, can I see or not? You can't say this option. If you sign up recently, then only you can see this option data graph. Now, go to the unified and consume. Now what I want to do is, now first I want to add my customer API to this unified schema, the data graph. Now we can see here, you can select the environment. Somebody asked the question, right? So is it environment based? Yes. If I have, this is my free trial. So it is showing only the sandbox, but if your organization has different environment, it will show from here. You can drop down, select it, which environment you are going to create a data graph. Now, the customer API, I want to add it into Anypoint data graph. What you need to do, click on Add API. As soon as you do this, you can search from the Exchange, or you can select over here. All it is going to list, it is going to show over here. When it is published, this API, every details are going to show. So somebody asked the question, can I access external APIs? Yes, you can access the external APIs, but you need to create a ramel first of all for those the external APIs. As a similar data types, it is exposed, and then you can add it based on this. Now I'm going to add this customer API into Anypoint data graph. Click on add, click on next to configure URL. Now, so this, I think somebody asked the question, right? If I update the ramel later, maybe logic, not only logic, if even the ramel also changed, then you need to select that from here, whatever the latest version it has. So this is from the Exchange, it is showing this version. Now confirm the selection. Yes, I want to access this version. Everything looks good. If your ramel looks good, then only it is going to come this. Now, yes, so as I said, the external APIs, if you want to access it, in the ramel specification, if you specify that URL, you can take it from that, or you can add that new URL also. That external API URL, you can configure over here. Now, either if you want to access a mocking API URL, you can copy that marking URL from the exchange and you can put it over here. But I want to access my real-time runtime access URL. So I'm going to configure that. So this is customer API. You can give only till this API. You don't have to give the /customer or anything. So that URL I'm going to give over here. Whatever the resources are available in RAML, you don't have to give. Just till base path you have to give. Click on save. Now this is done. Now click on next to provide authorization. So somebody asks how I can provide the authorization mechanism. Now Anypoint data graph can provide different types of authorization mechanisms to query that data from those APIs. You can see basic authentication, client ID enforcement from the header, and the client ID enforcement via query parameters. If we have something, custom policies and all, you can select this also. So these are the mechanisms currently it is supported by the Anypoint data graph. Okay, so for the demo purpose, one of the API created without any authorization, I can select no auth. My customer API doesn't have any authorization. The next API which I'm going to add it has some authorization mechanism. I'm going to show that. Okay, so no auth I selected because of my process customer API doesn't need anything, because of, if you see, I'm not passing anything in the over here here also. Okay, so headers, I just pass it over client ID, secret ID, but I'm not really using them. So no auth I selected. Click on preview schema. Now when I click on preview schema, it is going to bring all the get methods over here. So my RAML has I think I will open one more tab, Anypoint and customer API. If you see here, I have one get method here, get customer by ID, and one more method, get customers. So that is all customers it is going to get. Now that is going to bring over here the customer, it is that one, customer by ID. This is another method. Okay, so this is going to return list of customers. It is going to return the customer details. Now we can see those data types over here, the customer data type over here, you can see. So this is the queries. We can query two methods over here. This is one method, this is another method. And the data types, I have address data type. You can see those address data types field over here. And I have a details, another data type. Those fields you can see over here. Okay. Now you want to edit this schema now in a unified schema. Click on edit schema. Now what you can do, you can add this schema now. You can see now customer details now. You need to put visible if you want to access this data. Now if you want to access data, you need to enable collaboration. So the customer ID. So I think somebody has a question how we can uniquely access, right? Customer by ID, you want to enable this. Now we can select that ID as your unique ID. Okay, but one thing is, make sure that your data types should be at least with the and it should not be not nullable. Okay, that means it should be mandatory, that it should be defined. Click on confirm. Now I enable the collaboration. Now you can access the customer data type, the customer details data type using this data graph now. Okay, and you can see now I don't want to show the address details. You can hidden that, or if you want to make him available, you need to say that visible over here. Okay, so if you don't want to allow the whoever is consumer to see the email ID, you can put it hidden over here. This is how we can secure the data, what needs to be exposed, what needs not to be exposed. Okay, so I can say that over here, whatever the field, if I don't want to access, I can say the phone, I don't want to access it, I can put it that one. Okay, and we can link this data, but as of now the first API I'm adding, I don't have a similar data types or same data types. I'm not going to link or merge any data types. It is the first data type. I'm going to create it in the unified schema. I'm going to leave it as it is. Now if you select address also, you can select that also. You can see that what are the elements you want to show, what elements you don't want to show also. And if you want to rename this data type, you can rename that also. Currently it is address is there. If you want to say customer address, you can mention that also. You can do that also. Okay, so I'm not going to do right now here. Now I can leave it as it is. Now I mentioned that what can be accessible and what should not be accessible, and I enable the collaboration. Now I can add this schema to my unified schema. Now you can see we are updating the unified schema to reflect these changes. It will take minimum 15 minutes or something. It is taking up to 15 minutes, sorry. So now proceed to unified schema. Now what it is happening over here, you can see it is updating your unified schema with this process customer API to graph. Okay, so that means you need to wait till it updates. As soon as it update, it is going to show the status over here up to date. You need to wait for that up to date, then only you can access this data from the unified schema. Clear? Now you can see the unified schema has now two methods, customer by ID, customer, and it has address data type and customer data type. You can visibly see that what is my unified schema also contain, what data I can access also. That also we can see from here. So till it update, I will take any question, let it update. Then I will show another API to be added into unified schema. Then I will test it, how we can test it and all. So any questions? So I can take it up. You can see it is updating. It will take a couple of minutes. It won't take 15 minutes, I'm sure, but it will take a couple of minutes, yes.
So I have made host everybody. Anybody can ask.
So is it clear, guys? Because of I don't want to be, something I'm saying. Maybe if you have anything add on, maybe somebody might be explode and all, you can add also.
I have a question, Amir. So, like, suppose I want to give my GraphQL endpoint with the documentation. So, just like the RAML, so that they can see the structure. So, is it possible? Hey, hi, Amir. You're on mute, I think.
I went mute, yeah. So the GraphQL is something you can query the data, whatever it is exposed. So now if I go to, I will show that in the next step, what I can access it, my consumer. I will give the URL. Okay, so you can directly see that what is exposed directly, you can see, but we don't have any documentation or anything. Whatever the GraphQL is exposed to the data, that you don't have document as of now. Maybe in the future, maybe if MuleSoft enable that exporting some document or anything, that might help, but as of now you don't have that option.
Okay.
Hey, Ami, Ashish here. You're able to hear me? Hello?
I'm going on mute. I don't know.
Yes,
Should I?
Ashish.
Yeah. Yes, Ashish.
Okay. So I posted that question. I was working on this data graph. I
Okay.
saw that limitation. You see the primary key. Primary key has to be string in my data type. Is that the limitation you also see?
Yes.
So
That's
this
correct.
is Yeah. So then,
Yes.
then how can I work with other ID? Customer ID can't be a string, right?
Okay, see, if even though it is coming as the number or anything, you can convert that into as a string, right? But if it is an actual string, if it is, you want to convert